Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, welcome. So we're doing a Q&A video today. Probably just going to answer questions as I'm going through nail prep and doing my nails. I'm going to take my sanding band and I'm going to go over my natural nail just to remove the shine from it. I'm going to put it on the lowest speed here. Next, I'm going to apply a peel off base coat. Okay, so the first question is Polygel easier than acrylic? I personally wouldn't know because I've never worked with acrylic. Judging from the YouTube videos that I've seen or used to watch, it doesn't make polygel look easier or harder. There's a technique with acrylic when laying beads and application, and I feel like that's the same with polygel as well. And I guess it's personable on whether you think polygel is harder or easier, because they both have like their pros and cons, which is different for everyone. I personally don't think any nail medium is easier than the other because gel X isn't all that easy. Even with applying regular gel polish, and there's a technique with that too, because you can easily mess up regular gel polish application. Now I'm going to size all my nail tips. These are the favorite nail tips that I like to use. They're C-curve tips. I know some people prefer the flat or no C-curve. You can just use whatever tips you like, but these are my personal favorite. I'm going to use base coat to glue on my tips. I did trim these. I'm gonna shape them out a little bit because when I did cut them, they were a little uneven. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I'm gonna take my sanding band again and I'm going to blend the tip with the nail. If you don't have an e-file, you can use a regular file. It works just as well. I also have a full video on how to do your nails without a drill. I'll have it linked on the top right, so you can go ahead and watch that. Now I'm going to apply some base coat and I'm going to cure it in the lamp for 30 seconds. Someone asked what are my favorite nude and base colors, and these are my top three. I really like these three, but this one is definitely my holy grail. Someone asked what slip solution I like to use. I definitely like to use alcohol. I think it's the easiest one, it's the most affordable, and it's easy to get. I also really like the Model 1 slip solution, only because I think certain slip solutions work best on certain polygel. Like for example, for some smooth and sticky polygels, alcohol works really well with Macart, Model 1s, or Saviland. Macart is the best to use for alcohol. Alcohol is the best slip solution for that brand. And the reason I mentioned the Model 1 slip solution is because I think like drier or firmer polygels are better for it. Not necessarily like drier polygels, but they're like super firm. They're not sticky. Like brands like SXC or Acrogel, those are more on the firmer side. And sometimes using alcohol can dry it out, so you'll get that weird like white film on it. And that is because the alcohol is drying the polygel out. So for that type of polygel, I would probably use Model 1's lip solution, or just you can use base gel as well. And for polygel brushes, I do like to use these Beatles polygel brushes because they're big and I feel like it helps with application a lot, just personally for me. Most brushes that come in polygel kits, they're really tiny compared to the Beatles polygel brush. This is the color that I'm going to be using today. It's Daydream by McCart. Let's get started on application. I'm going to place a bead at the tip of my nail. So when I place beads, I like to place them directly from the tube. It's easier and it's less mess. For long nails, I like to place a bead at the free edge and work on the structure. I feel like it's easier to I just feel like it's easier to work in two beads. You don't have to specifically work in two beads. You can add more if you need to. I just think it's easier if you get the tip done and then add a cuticle bead. I just added a decent amount and I'm going to start patting away at the polygel. So when I get to a point where I'm done patting, I'm going to start dragging and swiping the polygel like this. So you can drag it if you want to and swipe it so it's not bumpy all the way. Because if you just keep patting, it's just going to be bumpy. And you're going to see all those ridges there. So you need to do patting and swiping motions. Also, make sure you're paying attention to your side walls. And you just do that by swiping down the sides. Just wipe down the sides occasionally when you notice that it's starting to look too wide. Once I like how this looks, I am going to carry it in the lamp for 60 seconds. I do like to work in layers, so I am going to add a cuticle bead after this. Someone asked, what polygel do I recommend and why? And I recommend SXC, Model 1s, Savaland, and McCart. And the reason why is because I feel like the consistency for those polygels are very good for beginners especially, and you can shape them really well. Especially when you're starting out, you need a really good polygel consistency. It makes it so easy to shape and mold your polygel. Someone also asked what's my favorite polygel brand to use, and my personal favorite is McCart. This is the very first polygel brand that started my polygel journey. Their polygel consistency is really good too. So for the cuticle bead, I do like to push that like on the upper corner here. I'm going to press the polygel into my cuticle, but I'm not going to flood it. I'm going to make sure there's a small tiny gap. And if I do end up flooding it, I'm just going to clean it around. But you just want to press a little bit in like so. And you can see with my brush, I'm just pressing it in. You want to do that on all sides. And then for the bottom, I'm just going to drag it down. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And that's where we're going to build our apex. We're going to smooth this part out, but we're also going to make sure it doesn't look like a mountain. Like this is completely unacceptable. You need to blend this out. But we are going to make sure there's a bit of a hump because the apex is the highest point of the nail and it builds structure for your nail. In case you were to break it, it wouldn't, snap your nail or damage it in any way. So always make sure if you have long nails, you do need to build an apex. Honestly, I'm not too good at building apexes myself, so I'm going to try to demonstrate this in the best way I possibly can. I'm going to keep blending. As you can see, this doesn't look good. It's way too thick and that bulge is way too out. I'm just going to keep pressing it down and blending. This doesn't look too bad to me. I'm going to probably keep blending anyway. But your apex should look something like this, but this is pretty thick, so I'm going to keep blending. I know some people don't like an apex on their nails. You don't have to make it like a mountain, but you do need to have an apex, especially if you have really long nails. You will have to clean around your cuticle a lot too, and that's okay. Clean as much as you need to. You really don't want it to touch here, especially for retention. If it starts to flood, that's when you'll have a lifting issue. Really make sure it's clean and just keep cleaning it around. It can get annoying sometimes. Sometimes polygel doesn't move all the time, but just occasionally pay attention to that and clean around. I think I like how this looks, so I'm going to go ahead and cure this in the lamp for another 60 seconds. All right, the next question is, what was the hardest part about learning polygel application? That's a really good question. I think the hardest part was probably learning how to control the gel and mold it. I feel like that's the hardest part, and getting a technique that I'm used to. Because when I first started learning polygel, it was back in 2020, and there wasn't that much polygel content. So I didn't really know how to use it. I didn't really know how to go about it to go with application. I used to just do one whole big bead, which is perfectly fine if you like to work that way. I think it's just harder to mold. So I think that was probably the hardest thing. Another question is, how long did it take for you to be good with polygel, and what do you recommend for beginners? Personally, I think it took me about 2 years to be like good at it, like good enough to be on social media and to record and show on YouTube and help other people to do polygel. I'll also show you guys how my nails looked before YouTube and TikTok. I mean, they were pretty decent, and I still want to improve as well. I recommend for beginners to take their time. Really take your time with application. You really don't want to rush it and time yourself. And learn as much as you can about nails and nail products and polygel. Also, for some odd reason, watching acrylic applications helped me a lot with my polygel application as well. So even though it's a different medium, the way they place the beads and apply it, I feel like you can use that same, you can apply that with polygel as well. Another person asked, how do I stay in frame? I'd be struggling. Honestly, same. Low key, I struggle too. The best advice I can give is try to get a phone mount and have the phone above or directly behind where you're working. Make sure you leave just enough room so that you're not knocking into the camera a lot, because when I first started, I had it way too close to my workspace and I was kept knocking into the camera a lot. So make sure you don't do that. Just keep an eye on your camera too while you're recording. You'll kind of train yourself to stay in frame after a while. It's definitely not easy all the time, and yeah, even I still go out of frame myself. Next question is, do you take clients, and also how long does it usually take for you to do a long set on someone? I'm not taking clients just yet. I'm doing close friends and family for now. I just feel like I'm not ready to take clients. And on top of that, I take forever to do long nails, especially long nail sets, like extra long nail sets. I take forever, especially if it's not a solid color. Like solid color sets take me about 2 hours and a half. Application alone takes me an hour though. That's not including designs and filing and nail prep. Ask what is your zodiac sign? I'm a Cancer. I'm a water sign. And this kind of just brought me to make this video. I kind of feel like redoing my zodiac series for nails. Like I attempted last year, but I didn't follow through at all. I just did first the Cancer zodiac sign and didn't even do any more of it. So I kind of just thought, why not redo this by discussing astrology? I love astrology and I've been studying it for about like 7 years now. I'm just giving my astrological takes from my personal experience and the things I've read and researched about. So just take what resonates and leave what doesn't. If you have some astro knowledge, definitely feel free to leave your wisdom down in the comments. I'm going to start the series with the babies of the zodiac. I'm going to show you an inspiration picture. And I feel like if I was Aries, I would totally get this set. Red is ruled by Aries, and it's the color of fire and excitement. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. The number 1 symbolizes new beginnings, fresh starts, and fire is your element. You guys are ruled by Mars. Scorpio and Aries both have Mars as their ruling planet. Aries is an active sign. It's also energetic, it's excitable, impulsive, optimistic, open to change and new experiences. It's also the sign of self. Aries is also a masculine sign, meaning it's active rather than receptive. Aries is also a cardinal sign, meaning that it's outgoing and open to new experiences. Aries can tend to get into a lot of physical fights or heated arguments, and you guys are ruled by Mars. Mars rules war, aggression, and conflict. So it's kind of just like an innate feeling for your nature. If you don't resonate with that and you're an Aries, you may have something else dominant in your chart that probably makes you a little more peaceful. Also, Mars's influence donates courage, passion, and also competition. You guys are very highly competitive people, perfect for sports. So when the sun is in the sign of Aries, a lot of you guys are an activist for something or part of some sort of cause, and you're a doer, you are an initiator. Aries are the initiators of the zodiac. Most cardinal signs are initiators. If you have a plan or an idea, you typically don't take a lot of time to act on it. Aries is also very talkative and vibrant, especially when it comes to a topic that they like or are very interested in or are knowledgeable in. You'll be happy to talk about it in great detail, exactly what you think about it. I personally really like that aspect about Aries. I always learn something from you guys, and I always have a very good conversation or very good debate with Aries. You guys like a good, engaging, and thought provoking conversation. And obviously, the whole chart always goes into play, but in my experience, I kept running into a lot of Aries like that. Aries is very interested in higher learning or just gaining knowledge in general. Some Aries are sidereal Pisces, so Pisces rules higher education and learning. I feel like that's where it stems from for a lot of Aries. Sometimes Aries can be very short tempered, and sometimes you guys can throw tantrums and be a bit emotional. Well, I don't really want to say emotional because they label us Cancers as emotional, so I'll say you guys are more passionate. I think Aries emotions are more explosive. Out of the fire signs, you and Sagittarius are definitely on the explosive side. Aries can also can get very bored quickly when it comes to certain things, especially if success isn't immediate or in whatever you're doing. You tend to lose interest and just go find excitement elsewhere. But sometimes a lot of you guys can start something and not finish, and you guys can have a notorious reputation for starting something and not finishing it. I think it's due to just having that short patience. Aries are really bad at lying. Like, we can all literally see right through y'all. But sometimes you can lack some tact and diplomacy. And I feel like Sagittarius can also lack this quality of tact as well because it's kind of impulsive. You guys act really impulsive. You say things out of impulse and tend to regret things that you say out of impulse because sometimes you just do or say things without speaking and just say whatever pops in your head. Sometimes you guys end up regretting it later, but sometimes that act of impulse is needed. Sometimes that act of impulse gets things done. Aries can also make really good entrepreneurs. That's also the sign of entrepreneurship, being your own boss, having your own business. A lot of Aries would be really good at being fitness trainers or personal trainers. If you have an Aries midhaven, which is the highest point of your chart, those career fields would do really well for you as well. I think I'm going to talk about some upcoming forecasts for Aries, especially for the next month. It's going to be really exciting. And if you lose me here, I'm really sorry. I'm going a little bit advanced or intermediate with the astrology that I'm saying. Just pay attention to the simple stuff. It's March 21st. Well, when you see this video, it will be March 21st, start of Aries season. I think this Aries season is really initiating the start of a lot of upcoming crazy transits that are coming. The sun is now in the cardinal sign of Aries. Aries, as we talked about, is taking the initiative, acting on goals, and overcoming fear. Right now, Jupiter is also in Aries. Jupiter is the planet of expansion, abundance, blessings, and luck. It also amplifies anything it touches, expands anything it touches. Currently, there's a lot of planets in Aries. I believe the moon is also in Aries, the sun is in Aries, Jupiter is in Aries. All of this energy is really going to give you the push you need to work towards those goals that you have set, and it will bring in very motivational energy on a collective level. You might end up finding yourself taking more risks, having more confidence, and stepping more into yourself. I feel like this is going to be a really good time for you to follow your passion and take direction of what you want in life. You also want to be very careful of becoming burnt out because you might end up taking on more than you can handle. So those of you that have an Aries Jupiter natally, happy Jupiter return. I hope everything has been really exciting for you. I have to say that my Jupiter return was pretty smooth sailing. My Jupiter is in Pisces, so it has already passed. Nothing like crazy or monumental happened for me. I was expecting like some big thing to happen. I mean, I did start my Polygel, my YouTube channel, and my content creation around my Jupiter return. When this video comes out, it will be March 21st, 2023, and there is going to be a new moon in Aries. New moons are about beginnings, new beginnings, fresh starts, and new energy. And I think the next couple of days might be a bit intense, especially with the whole like TikTok ban rumors going on, and everyone's kind of just like tense about it. And then next month, Jupiter and the Sun will be having a conjunction in Aries on April 11th. And basically, when a conjunction happens, it's two planets are coming together and having a positive aspect. I feel like it's going to be really exciting for Aries. I think we're going to see a lot of celebrities with prominent Aries placements in the tabloids a lot. We're going to be hearing about them a lot, whether it be good or bad. And I'm not really too familiar with the whole like Selena Gomez and Hailey Bieber situation and the drama. I don't really pay attention to it. But I think Selena's career is probably going to elevate in some way since she does have an Aries midheaven. So I'll probably try to pay attention to Selena in the next couple months. We're gonna see something going on with that. Keke Palmer also has a Aries midheaven too, so I think we're gonna hear about her. And also Summer Walker. I feel like something's gonna be good with her, either a good song or an album that's gonna come out with something. Something's gonna go on with her. Also pay attention to your Aries friends. I feel like a lot of them with prominent Aries placements, they're going to be pretty popular or have some good things going on with their lives. I think this would be a good time to put yourself out there if you have prominent Aries placements or have Aries in your midheaven, especially. It's really, really good to put yourself out there. Apply for those jobs that you feel like you may not be qualified for because you never know. You might end up getting noticed because of this really good aspect. Sorry, for this really good transit, especially Leo risings, late Cancer risings, depending on whichever house system that you use. The conjunction will be occurring in your 10th house, which rules your public image and your career, your reputation. You'll notice some changes in your life surrounding those themes. If you're a Pisces rising, I feel like the transit will be occurring in your second house of finances, income, and possessions. You might get a good like income gain of some way or huge money gain in some way. Maybe even for Virgo risings too, since it's transiting your 8th house of other people's finances and shared resources. Even receive some sort of inheritance. Gemini risings, this is a good time to do some networking and putting yourself out there, especially with social media. I think Capricorn risings will also benefit from that as well, since Capricorn risings will be having Jupiter transiting through their 3rd house. We have some crazy and fun stuff abound for the spring. Aries season is really initiating that change. My microphone died, so I was talking and didn't realize it died until after I was editing this. There's a question about polygel being sticky, and you do have to make sure your brush is wet because once it gets dry, that's when it'll start sticking to the brush and becoming a hot mess.
Since application is done, we are ready to begin filing. I'm going to go ahead and wipe away that sticky layer with alcohol. When I first started doing polygel, I never used to wipe away that sticky layer, so all of my files were getting gummed up and I threw them away each time I filed. Just didn't know. So for filing, I do like to use an 80 grit on the sidewalls and free edge, and then 100 on the top of the nails. I personally find using 80 too coarse to use all throughout the nail. I just find it makes it harder to buff out the scratches. You can also go over the nail file with the Cuticle 2 to seal it if you don't have an e-file. So to buff out my nails and go around the cuticle, I am going to take this medium coarse bit. This is also by my car and I'll have it linked in the description. I'm just going to go over where I filed just to remove the scratches, just so it makes it easier for us to do gel art. If you don't have an e-file, you can use a buffing block if you have one. It works just as great. For the gel art, we are going to be painting French tips on all of the nails, but it's going to be alternated between white and red gel polish. I am using white gel polish from Maddo Glam in the Cover Riverwalk. You guys know this is my favorite white gel polish to use as it's super pigmented and it's really great for gel art.
Ryan Little. Ryan Little. Ryan Little. So here's how the nails turned out. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I find that these nails are kind of like Y2K like, but I do like them. They do remind me of Aries a little bit. I like the red and white contrast that's going here. I have everything I used linked in the description box. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and happy Aries season. Now, let me know if you guys would like me to do more astrology talks when each zodiac season comes around, because I will definitely make this a series. And again, thank you so much for watching.